I was 18 when I found out I had uterine cancer. This is my story. I want to start with a quick disclaimer. I'll be talking about a lot of women's reproductive systems and a lot of graphic symptoms that I had. Also, periods. I know there's some people that don't like to talk about that openly in their house. If you want to just pop in some headphones, yeah, just do that now. I just want to say, if there's anyone that's going through cancer or really bad health issues, that you can get through it, because I did. I did not think that I would be alive. I got through it, and you can too. I'm just going to get right into it. I'm going to start with my first period that I got. I was 11 years old. I was at a Easter program, actually, or a Easter concert. Yeah, got my period. The funny thing is, maybe not funny, but I had actually lied to my mom that I got my period a year before that, just because my one friend had got hers, and I was like, I want to be cool and I want to have a period. So I just lied to her, and I didn't actually know that it came once a month, and I was like telling her that I had my period every 3 months or something. Um, yeah, and then when it actually came, then I was like, oh my goodness, but I couldn't tell her that that was my first period. Yeah, don't do that. Really, from the start, I had really bad cramps, and it was never pleasant to be on my period. It wasn't to the point where I couldn't handle myself, but I was definitely taking, Advil, Tylenol, Gravel, whatever, just to help with the pain. It was usually really bad the first day, and then after that, it wasn't so bad. Jumping ahead now, it's September 2015. I'm 13 years old. That was the day where something really changed. That's where I remember something really changing. It was the second day of grade 8. Here in Ontario, there's elementary school goes up to grade 8. From there, you go to high school. So grade 8 is always you're cool, and you're the oldest people in the school. It was so horrible. I had the worst cramps to where I had went to the washroom, and I had actually bled through my pants, and I loved these pants, and I don't think I ever wore them after that. They were just yoga pants, but they were gray, light gray. I just love them so much. Yeah, I bled through them. I started throwing up. I was like, oh, I gotta get to the office because I just gotta go home. I was in so much pain. I didn't have any Advil or anything. I hadn't noticed that I bled through my pants yet, but when I came out of the washroom, then I had to walk past some of the grade 8 boys that were in my class, and yeah, I was just thinking, "Oh, I hope they didn't hear me throw up." I remember being so embarrassed. Yeah, I got to the office. I guess I was really pale, and they got me a Coke to drink. Then they noticed that I had bled through my pants. My mom wasn't home. My aunt had to come and pick me up. It was just so chaotic, but yeah, that was the first time I was just in so much pain where I actually threw up. So now I'm going to jump to 2016. I was 14. I went for an appointment to get an ultrasound just because my periods were not getting better. I had cysts on my ovaries. So they put me on birth control. So yeah, my cysts went away, and I had a pretty, I would say, normal um period, normal to me anyway. Then I went off birth control when I was 15 or 16, um just because the cysts went away, and um things were looking normal again, so then I went off birth control. In 2018, I was 16, and I was starting to have a lot of anxiety, and I didn't know that it was anxiety. I I started drinking a lot. I was just trying to cover up how I felt because my periods were a week long, sometimes 8 days or 9, and they were really heavy. Even though it was quote unquote normal, I was still in a lot of pain. It just wasn't as bad as before I was on the birth control. I was still, doing like normal 16-year-old girl things. I was hanging out with my boyfriend a lot, hanging out with friends, working on the farm in the summer, but my periods definitely were getting worse throughout that year. So the next year, 2019, I'm now 17 and it was asparagus season. Asparagus season is like May and June. My periods must have been really bad, but I just remember this one day being on the asparagus machine. When you're cutting asparagus, you're sitting and like you're bending over and literally cutting the asparagus, picking it up, putting it in a bin, and like um if you're on your period, it's just not great at all. I was just in so much pain. So I was on the machine, I couldn't even think anymore. I got off and I said I gotta go get Advil or something, and I had went to the break room and then I just started throwing up, and I was just in so much pain. I ended up curling up on the couch. Our break room was actually a cube van, so I ended up curling up on the front seat, and the Advil wasn't working, and I was just, waiting for it to kick in. It was terrifying how much pain I was in. Throughout 2019, my periods were lasting 10 to 2 weeks, and it would be like 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Probably mid 2019, I started getting blood clots like the size of my fist. I was just passing these blood clots, and that was the most painful thing. That summer of 2019, I started working for my aunt and uncle. They have a painting business, and I started working part time for them. I was almost always on my period, and I didn't want to lift the paint buckets just because lifting heavy things would trigger it, and it was understandable that they didn't really want me working anymore, so they just kind of let me go. I must have talked to my mom about my periods and just how horrible it's been, and I was going through so many pads that it was concerning. And I was like always on my period, every 2 weeks I was on my period again. October of 2019, I went to emerge. It was because my period had started, I think the beginning of October, and it had not stopped. I think it was like 3 weeks at that time, still passing those huge clots. Um, it wasn't like light bleeding, it was a lot of bleeding. Sometimes I go and sit on the toilet and just bleed because I was bleeding so quickly that a lot of times it wouldn't actually soak into my pad. It would just kind of run off um and just like get everything dirty. I was up a lot at night just because of the pain. I was throwing up. I was very thin at this time and very unhealthy. I was also drinking a lot. I didn't know how to cope with it. Oh, I do know why I went to Emerge. It was because I had bought, it's not funny, but it is a little funny now thinking back to it. Um, I had bought like a weed brownie thing from some kid in high school, and I ate the whole thing, and I remember, like, he told me, "Don't eat the whole thing," and I did. And the reason why I got that was because I didn't know how to handle myself anymore. I was just, my periods were so bad. I was in so much pain. I couldn't sleep at night. And yeah, I just thought that that would relax me, and I ended up having a severe reaction. I cannot do weed. It's actually, like, in my family, like, my mom can't. She had the same reaction when she tried it. My brother had the same reaction. Yeah, it's just not good at all. I told my parents. I mean, I was tripping. I was tripping like crazy. After that, that was when she brought me to Emerge. Yeah, so now I'm at Emerge. The doctor comes in. I got an ultrasound and an x ray. And then I was referred to a gynecologist. She honestly saved my life. She thought that it was a polyp or like a giant, not a cyst, because on the ultrasound they could tell that it wasn't full of fluid or something. It was like solid. So they thought it was a polyp. And so she scheduled me in for a surgery for April of 2020 and got me on some birth control that was supposed to completely stop my period for 3 months. And then, like, I don't know, take those sugar pills and have a period for a week and then another 3 months of no period. Those pills honestly did not work. Like I said, October of 2019, my period started, did not stop until March of 2020. I had a 5-month long period with excessive bleeding and clots. The beginning of 2020, I'm now 18. I was still in high school and I had stopped going because I was just so sick. I was on a lot of painkillers, like really strong painkillers, rotating. Like 2 hours I could take this painkiller, and 3 hours I could take this one, and um, like naproxen, which is like a muscle relaxant, and just all of these things, and I still was in a lot of pain. My period hadn't stopped. Like I said, it only stopped in March, and even though it stopped in March, it's still, and I was on birth control to not even have a period at all. And it would still come, like, if I would pick something up or like sweep a floor or stand and do dishes. Like, I couldn't do anything in the house. I had to be so careful because it would just trigger something. I and a lot of times it would happen at night where I would go to sleep feeling fine and I'd wake up and I woke up from the pain starting, and then I would panic because I knew it was going to get really bad. And so my mom and dad, they were up with me a lot in the night. A lot of times I had to be driven to Emerge because I was just in so much pain. Like, I would be almost screaming, and I would go to Emerge and they'd give me morphine or, whatever. And the pain would finally, it wasn't like the pain went away, but I was just on so many medications that I would just end up like passing out. I was going through number 4 pads. Like I said, it was like the pads couldn't even keep up. I'm trying to keep um this timeline right, but I keep on like remembering things and like adding things. So I hope this all makes sense, but um so the first few months of 2020, very rough. Lots of blood clots. I was just bleeding through. I You know what I would do? I remember I would put like a number 4 pad on my underwear and like put 2 of them, one on the back and one like on the normal spot, and then I so that when I was sitting or laying down, because I did a lot of sleeping. I mean, I was on so many pain medications. I would just sleep like through the day. sleep through half the night and then wake up. I watched a lot of Grey's Anatomy at this time, a ton of Grey's Anatomy. I'm pretty sure I watched almost like all the seasons in like 4 months or something. My appointment came April 20th, I think. The receptionist called me and canceled my surgery. And I remember I was just sitting on the couch and I was on the phone with her. She said it was canceled. And I was just so numb. I had been in so much pain. I was just mentally, physically exhausted. I know my mom, she remembers a lot more. And I think she was really, really sad when, of course she was. She was really sad when that appointment got canceled. Corny, my husband, um, so we were dating at that time, and he would just come over and like just sit on the couch with me. We would just watch shows, a lot of times just fall asleep, and that like a lot of days like that where I was just so out of it. I was in so much pain that we just sat on the couch for like the whole year of 2020 was just me so fragile and on so many pain medications and in so much pain. One of the worst times. This was in June of 2020. It was like the last time that I had went to Emerge because my pain was so bad. My parents were cutting asparagus, so no one was home, and I called my mom and I said it's really bad. It's really bad. Like it had came on like that and I knew that it was going to get really really bad. She came home and I just got in the vehicle. I think she helped me put my shoes on because I couldn't really do it. The nearest town is 30 minutes away, and I remember just saying like just speed. Like I wanted to get pulled over so that I could get to the hospital faster with like in a cop car. Like I was literally delusional. I was in so much pain. When I got to the hospital, I was hyperventilating, and she so in Emerge, you first go in and you talk to the nurse, I'm guessing. Then they call you back. And when I was in that spot where I was talking to the nurse and I was just like hyperventilating, and she was like, "You better stop breathing like that or else you're going to make yourself faint." And she was so rude and so mean, but I had been going through this pain already for a year, and I knew like it's not gonna get better. It's only gonna get worse unless I get the medication. They probably thought I was like a drug addict or something because I was saying like I need morphine. I've had this pain before. I was telling them, and that was COVID. They had all these protocols, and I was in a room. I was just throwing up. I remember this nurse came in and she was like, "Just drink some water. Just drink some water." And she was so rude. And okay, I'll drink some water. And of course, I just threw that up. I was on the phone with my mom because I had to be alone in there because I was 18. And that's another thing. I was alone for all of these times that I went to Emerge to get painkillers. I had to walk in alone. And so I was on the phone with my mom, and she said, "Just walk out there and see if there's someone that can help you." And it had already been 45 minutes, so I did. And of course, they were really mad that I got out of my room. Of course, they didn't know what was going on, but it just it just sucked. Finally, July 23rd, I got my surgery. I had a DNC. So they were just gonna remove it and hopefully everything would be good. Yeah, the DNC is just where they scrape out your uterus. And so she went in, and the surgery took a lot longer planned, and she called my mom and was like, "Whatever we removed, it was not good. We're gonna send it away. Yeah, she just told my mom, like, I don't know what that was, but that it wasn't good. For the DNC, they dilate you, and I was already dilated to like a 4. So the pain that I was having, I was actually dilating, and I don't know how much I had been dilating, but my body was literally trying to give birth to this huge cyst. I think the cyst was like what she said, 7 centimeters by 6 centimeters, something like that. My body was literally trying to give birth to this thing. The pain that I was having was like childbirth, and I was just trying to cover it up with these painkillers and, childbirth. I'm pretty sure the only way you can cover that up is like if you have an epidural. I really wasn't exaggerating when I said I was in a lot of pain. In August of 2020, I was referred to a specialist, a gynecologist, which was a specialist. That's what they told me. And I was supposed to go to section B of the hospital and, look it up. And it's the cancer clinic. That was scary. That was the first time that I had seen cancer. My first appointment there, amazing doctor. It was actually like 2 years before he retired. He was a little bit older, but he was amazing. He said there was 6 things that it could be. 5 were a rare type of cancer, and the other one was just a very rare growth. They had sent whatever the tumor, it was a tumor that they removed. They had sent that to Toronto to be tested. Then at this time, that's when all the really like harsh testing happened, where MRI, CT. I was already having a lot of blood work before this and ultrasounds, but much more blood work and ultrasounds and X-rays. Seemed like I had some test every week. I had my surgery July of 2020, and I had been waiting for results for months and months and months. I honestly thought there was nothing wrong. Like, I was already like, I had felt better. I still had like quite a bit of cramping, and I was still having a period. It was a little bit normal now, but it was still very painful. Not like how it was, but it was still painful. Um, and I honestly thought there was nothing wrong. Then I got the call that it was cancer. I was actually at my great grandma's house with my grandma. My great grandma, she had been kind of going downhill, so me and my grandma, we were there. We were just cleaning up and making sure she had ate lunch and stuff. When he called me, I was like, really bracing myself, like this is gonna be whatever it is, like, he's gonna tell me and it's gonna be okay. I really didn't think it was cancer. He said that it wasn't benign and that it was a high grade endometrial sarcoma. And I didn't understand what benign was. So I was like, so it's not cancer? And he was like, no, it is cancer. And then he like said it was a high grade endometrial sarcoma. It really is like how it is in the movies where how everything just kind of goes quiet. I was just sitting there on my great grandma's bed on the phone. I had just gotten told I had cancer. And I couldn't believe it. I don't even know what all he said after that. Up the phone, and I just started crying. And my grandma, she, gave me a hug and she said it was going to be okay. And my grandma G, so sweet. She was like, "They're going to fix you. They're going to fix you." And she was already getting dementia. It was sweet that in that moment, she was like really clear. So right away, they booked me for another appointment for December 23rd to have another DNC. They're just going to scrape everything out again and see if there was still cancer left. They did that, and there was. So they called me again, and at this time, it's like, it's nearing the end of December. A lot of the appointments, they were on the phone in 2020, yet too. It was either I went to the appointments in person and I was alone, or it was on the phone. I was sitting on the couch, and there's this huge window in my parents' front room, and I was just sitting there, like leaning on the window, talking to um, my cancer doctor, and he said they had a board meeting that with like 20 different doctors, just to talk about what they should do for me. He said that in his 35 years of working at the cancer clinic, like I said, this was like a year before he retired, so he was pretty old. And yeah, he said like 35 years of working there, and he had never seen this cancer before. The only time he did see it, it wasn't in his clinic. Like, it was such a rare thing. They had this huge board meeting, and he just said, like, this cancer is so aggressive, and like they could try doing chemo radiation. He said, like, if it starts spreading, like, that's it. Like, he just told me, like, that's it. It's like cat's out of the bag. Like, there's no putting it back. How he explained this cancer to me, it was like, most cancers are spaghetti. Like, you lay them out, you can lay them out in a straight line, and you can, with radiation, get all the spaghetti, or get all the cancer in order or whatever. But my cancer was like a overcooked bowl of spaghetti that's just all tangled, because like a sarcoma is in the muscle, so the cancer was like in the wall of my uterus, like it was in there. He said that the other thing was having a hysterectomy. They believed that that was the best thing for literally my survival. I sat down, I talked to my parents, I talked to Corny because we were dating at the time, and I knew he wanted children one day. He's so good with kids. And, I I was so that's when I really started to get sad. Corny was just like, I just want you to be healthy. I just don't want to lose you. My parents, they just said, like, we just want this out of you so that you don't have to be in pain anymore. I agreed to have a hysterectomy. It was a partial hysterectomy, and that was booked for January 4th of 2021. I had a COVID test on December 30th. My phone died where I was recording on. So, yeah, where was I? So, December 30th, I had a COVID test. It came back positive. So, then my surgery got canceled again. And, but they were very quick to be like, if you don't have any symptoms, then we'll book we'll book the surgery close as we can. And so they were like calling me every day, what are your symptoms? My symptoms were only I lost my smell and taste, and that actually stayed for like 2 years. So then my surgery was booked for January 13th, and the night before I was really just in a daze. Like, I wasn't crying, I wasn't emotional. Um, I just I just felt like numb. Like, I didn't know what to feel. Scrolled a lot on TikTok that night. We had to get up at 5 a.m. because my surgery was pretty early in the morning. We live an hour away from the hospital, so yeah, I had to get up at 5 and barely got any sleep the night before. It's probably my fault. I was scrolling on TikTok just because I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to have anxiety. I didn't want to think about it too much. Again, no one was allowed to come with me in the hospital. The nurses were all really nice and they really cared for me and they talked to me and anything I needed, and they were constantly coming and checking up on me. I mean, I was almost 19. My birthday is January 27th, so this was like a week before my birthday. So I was just so young and I had uterine cancer. Yeah, I went in for the surgery. After the surgery, when I was waking up, I don't remember this, but my mom said that they actually called her because they couldn't calm me down. I was freaking out. Um, I was just so afraid of that pain that I had been in for so long. Any little pain that I would have, I just would freak out because I thought that it was that pain. And I was really out of it for the first 2 days in the hospital. I think I was there for 3 or 4 days. I don't really remember the first 2 days, and it was fine. Yeah, I wish my parents could be there with me, but they couldn't. It was what it was, I guess. The one day I was really hungry for McDonald's. My mom had, called and gave the nurse my backpack and it had McDonald's in it. And so I had some McDonald's. Yeah, that was really sweet. To leave the hospital, you have to use the washroom and walk around a certain amount of times. My walking was horrible because I couldn't stand up straight. It was like walking like hunched over just because the incision would pull if I tried to stand up. Using the washroom, well, I told them I have really bad constipation problems. I try to eat a lot of fiber now and like chia seeds. I still struggle with that. And I did not use the washroom, but I remember I lied and I said I did. And then I was allowed to leave. I just knew that once I was at home and I could actually relax, then I would be able to use the washroom. They let me leave and they wheeled me out on a wheelchair. Got in the van. When I got home, my parents had set up, like, I think my room was in the living room at this time because there's renovations going on in the house. So, yeah, I went in there and I ended up not sleeping on my bed because my bed was too tall. Since my room was in the living room at this time, then there was also like sofas in there, so I slept on the pull-out sofa. I really struggled. Like, I was in a lot of pain. I could barely walk. Like, I walked to the washroom and that was it. Sometimes just walking to the washroom and then going back to the couch, like, I would fall asleep. I was so exhausted from that. I was barely eating anything. I would have like horrible chills. It might have been like also withdrawal symptoms. Now that I know like what withdrawal feels like, I was on so many pain medications that like I might have been withdrawing from them a bit by the time it was time to take another one. I got the stitches removed, or the staples. My incision opened a little bit. I ended up going to the surgeon. I think it was like the post-op appointment. He said like, "Oh, it's fine. It looks fine. Like, if it's open, there's clearly an infection, but it's open. If it was closed, like, then you would have to worry about it." So yeah, I had my hysterectomy January 13th. At the beginning of February, I called. It was like at night. I had a horrible fever and I called the oncologist, told them like, I have a fever, I feel really bad. They're like, okay, come in. And um still at this point I was barely walking. Like, I walked to the washroom and back, and when I showered, my mom actually put a black garbage bag over a chair so that I could sit in the shower because I literally couldn't stand. Yeah, I went to the hospital and I went to Emerge. I told them who I was. I told them like, my symptoms and why I was there. After I was diagnosed with cancer, anytime I would go to Emerge or doctor's appointment, I was taken back immediately, like, to my own room. And that just became normal. I was taken back to a room like usual. They put in a IV. There was like a student doctor there, and that IV was the most painful thing I ever had. Like, my whole arm was bruised and it was so bad. Yeah, so they did the IV, they did an ultrasound and an x-ray. The blood work came back that I had an infection. On the ultrasound, there was like a whole like mass of blood that um was it was all infection. I had to have a drain put in, like a tube with a bag on it to drain this infection. Honestly, it's this is the part where that time when I was in the hospital for this, the infection and everything, that was the hardest hospital stay I had because I was in so much pain. I just wanted to be home, wanted to curl up in bed. I wanted my mom there, and at this point, I had just turned 19. Still, the COVID regulations, once you're 18, then no one could come in with you. So I was just alone. I was so sick. I ended up having a blood transfusion. So I was also just like throwing up the whole time I was there. And they realized I was allergic to morphine. Once I went off the morphine, then the nausea, it got a little bit better. But when they put in that tube, I was so terrified. I don't like medical procedures. I just want to be put to sleep. And they gave me this stuff that I'm not sure what it was, but it like made me really loopy. I definitely like I couldn't feel um I could feel pressure of what they were doing, which freaked me out. That's why I don't get how people have like C-sections and stuff. Like you can feel the pressure. And I just had a little tube put in. So they put this cloth over my eyes so that I wouldn't be able to see. I had like two nurses on either side of me. So sweet. They were both like I was holding both of their hands and I was just like just freaking out. I couldn't stand or anything at that point. Um and the medication it made me really loopy. So I wasn't able to walk. So they wheeled me back into the room and yeah, that's when I got the blood transfusion and I was there for I think 4 days just trying to fight that infection. I had the tube in my stomach for I think it was 2 months. I started to heal. I remember I had the tube in and I actually hung out with my cousin. I went to a party and my mom had sewn this bag. It was like polka dotted so that it would go over the bag so that it wasn't like this nasty ugly bag just hanging off of my pants. It was actually cute. I went to a party, felt a little bit normal because in Ontario the drinking age is 19 and I wasn't able to like have any drinks because I was on painkillers, so I couldn't drink with that. That was just so much fun. I hung out with my friends a few times when I still had that tube on, and I just started healing after that. So, yeah, I had a partial hysterectomy. I had my uterus removed, two lymph nodes, and my cervix. I actually ended up needing two more surgeries after this. One was because where they removed my cervix, they accidentally sewed a fallopian tube in the incision, which is crazy. And so I had to have that fallopian tube removed. Another one in 2023, I had my left ovary removed. So now I just have one ovary left. And I would love to keep that ovary because I don't want to go into menopause. I'm 23 now and I've had a lot of ups and downs since then. I hope that this helps someone. If there's anyone out there that has had cancer like this, I remember searching on YouTube trying to find people's stories and I couldn't find anything. If you are someone who has had this type of cancer or maybe you know someone who has had this type of cancer or uterine cancer, doesn't have to be this specific kind, leave a comment below because I would love to know. I'd love to talk to you. I hope this helps someone, and that's my story.